Art Growth Committee meeting to order at 6:24 p.m. Wednesday, September 13th, with myself, Lisa Dorsey, and Patrick McCoy. Are there any comments, suggestions, petitions by residents in attendance regarding any items not on the agenda? Okay, and seeing none, I'd like to move 4A up to ahead of the Building and Housing 2024 preliminary budget, since we do have the applicant here. Any objections to that? Any? Okay. Thank you. Mr. Gore?
Thank you. So Jeff, if you could pull those plans up. So this is a preliminary land development approval for 330 West Market Street. This is the property where currently houses Mitch's Gym, the old Avis car rental, the community services building, and Al's Automotive. Those four parcels will be combined into one for the construction of a multifamily apartment building, just shy of 60 feet in height, with associated parking on the site in a parking facility underneath of that building. The applicant is here this evening to go over the technical aspects of their submission. The Planning Commission did provide a favorable recommendation of this plan with some comments just for the applicant to follow up on some of the comments from the Planning Commission related to HARB, the historic aspects of the architecture, and to also comply with the additional comments and the outstanding comments, I should say, in the consultant review letters, which then would be finalized in their final land development submission. The applicant has requested a couple of waivers related to landscaping, right away width for the street, the driveway distance, entrance to for the parking garage. The entrance is less than 40 feet from the intersection of the alley. Site distance triangle waiver, a buffer planning strip, and again, some landscaping waivers, which are all listed in their application. One of the things that we need to determine with the applicant is they have agreed to pay a fee in lieu of for some landscaping. Due to some of the site constraints, they're not able to provide all of the required landscaping on the site, which is typical. They get as much in there as they can, which is appropriate to the site. And in the response letter, they have agreed to pay that. We do have to finalize an amount between the developer and our consultants. We'll figure out what that will be, and we will list that amount in the resolution if Borough Council so chooses to approve this project. So we will work with the developer on that end. Other than that, I can turn it over to Mr. Khan to speak to his application here if you have any questions.
Good evening. This application has been in front of the Planning Commission for a number of months. It consists of kind of a full block from Mitch's Gym, which I purchased, I believe, in 1998, down to the Wayne Street properties of the old, what I call Sylvester's Golf Station, and Al's Automotive, including the old Social Security building in the middle. We worked through really all of the details with the Planning Commission, subsequent to some of the waiver requests that Kevin just mentioned. We are really excited about this project. I think it's a great adaptive reuse of an underutilized property just outside the kind of town center of downtown Westchester, offering kind of a multifamily housing opportunity for people right outside of town, be able to walk right into town. I'm happy to go over the plan, go over more details, whatever you guys are interested in. Again, we can talk about the waivers, talk about the project. Really, I'm available to talk about whatever you folks would like to discuss. But we received a recommendation from the Planning Commission and for the most part received the support for the waivers as well.
Thank you. I just want to begin with, for the public out there, about how many apartments do you plan?
Right now, it's approximately 186 units.
And the one question that I've seen over and over is regarding retail. What, if any, plans for retail? Because I know in some places retail, the developers have foregone retail.
So Brian, there is no retail. There is no third-party retail in this project. The borough ordinance does not require retail. The exact section of the ordinance, I can't recall. Brian may be able to recall that. Very similar to the project across the street from this project, 313 West Market Street, which is an office building I built when actually the zoning was HO 180, about 180 feet in height at that point in time. There's a reason I didn't do retail here. There's a reason I didn't do retail here at Chestnut Square, because the stretching of the retail outside of what I consider the core blocks of retail in Westchester. And I got to Westchester in 1982, where about 50% of the retail storefronts in Westchester were vacant. I think part of the reason Westchester has flourished from a retail perspective is because the retail is condensed now in a few block radius of Gay, Market, and High Street. This is really not the area for retail. There's no retail across the street. The only retail on this block is Nudi's Cafe. So the ordinance doesn't require retail here. We have some what looks like retail at the corner of Wayne and Market Street, but it will be, it appears like it is retail, but very similar to Chestnut Square, it will be used for a residence. It will be a resident amenity area that will have the view of retail, but there really is no retail.
Thank you. Any other questions? Are there any public comment? Mr. Flynn or Daryl?
Darrell Cook, South Walnut Street. Without the alley waiver of 40 feet, what does the ordinance say for number of feet?
I don't know the question. Say the question.
How many feet are required from the alley for an entrance with current code?
Jeff, can you go back to that plan for me, please? And go, you can leave it right here and scroll over to the right-hand side of the plan. So down in the bottom right-hand corner there, you'll see that driveway entrance. That's the driveway to the garage. The ordinance requires any driveway opening to be 40 feet from the radius of an intersection. We noted this as a requirement. We're supportive of the waiver. There are other areas in the borough that have this, mainly the parking garage directly across the street for the county building. And because it is the alley, there's low traffic going through there. But to answer your question, Darrell, it's 40 feet. I don't have that exact distance without scaling it. The applicant says it's about 25 feet.
So this is the waiver we're requesting, and we got this waiver across the street at the street property. It's the distance of this driveway from the corner. to make it 40 feet destroys the geometry of parking under the building. See how you come into the building, you're entering a drive aisle, allowing you to enter the parking stalls. If this driveway required to be moved 15 feet to the south, it would destroy the ability to, you would lose all these parking spaces.
Jeff, can you raise up the, lower it down? I want to see more water out. That's good, that's not fire. I just want to see my name lights. Good evening, Bernie Flynn, 313 West Minor Street, speaking as an individual. The fact that this property being built directly behind my house, I live in the mansion along Potter Alley. So my house goes from Minor Street to Woollerton Street, and it ends there, and that's where the new building begins. I was concerned originally about the shadows. They did a shadow study because I wanted to make sure I still can grow tomatoes. Well, the shadow study showed in the summertime, we'll still have plenty of sunlight coming into the backyard. It will not make the backyard into a dark spot. The other issue was, I was concerned was the amount of traffic going in and out. And I sat outside of Chestnut Square for 2 days in a row to see how much traffic actually goes in and out of Chestnut Square at a given time. People don't leave. All people don't leave at the same time. They leave in dribs and drabs, and they come home in dribs and drabs. So the entrance of the garage is 35 feet from my property line. I sit on the alley. And I'm feeling extremely confident that that will not be an issue. The houses that go from my house at 313 West Minor down to 335 West Minor, we've had one resident that did not like the idea. No one else came to me to complain that they did not like the idea of the building. The building will be much nicer than what's there now. And it does increase the density of the borough, just like the other two properties will. But as far as being a neighbor living with this building in my driveway, I feel confident that my quality of life will not change whatsoever. And I support the building. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to just add, we started this project with a community meeting. We invited about 70 neighbors to a open forum at the old Mitch's Gym building, maybe 4 or 5 months ago. Heard great comments. One of the neighbors is Dale Friend, who's a very kind of a famous historic architect. We actually made some changes to the building based on his recommendation and comment. I used to live at 308 West Minor Street. So this kind of was my old neighborhood. And we just got great input from the neighborhood, and made several changes to the project pursuant to their concerns.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments regarding this project?
All right, so I have, I'm going to draw your attention to the screen, and this is the shadow study that Mr. Flynn was referencing. And you can see that those are the different times of day throughout the year. And the bottom left-hand picture is the most shadow, and that's the summer solstice. And Jeff, can you scroll down a little bit so I can see the time? So that's at 6 p.m. during the summer. And obviously that shadow would extend a little bit, but then begin to fade because the sun would be going down. But that was the greatest impact during that time. The rest of the year, there's zero impact to the residential properties behind it, according to their shadow analysis. One other thing I failed to mention in the intro is that the applicant, because they are providing they're providing outdoor amenity space for the residents, much like they did at Chestnut Square. They are not providing a public recreation space because it serves the building itself. However, Mr. Khan has agreed to provide a donation, we'll call it, to Horace Pippin Park, which then he is asking for that to be to offset any type of fee in lieu that Borough Council may require if they were going to. We haven't agreed on a number yet, but that's entirely up to Borough Council what they want to do with that fee in lieu. But if Mr. Khan is going to provide that donation to that park, we would specifically use it for Horace Pippin only, which is the closest park in proximity. Just a background, whenever a fee in lieu of is paid for recreation, it goes into a special fund and it's utilized only for the parks. So it can't get used for anything else. So it would be in the same vein as the donation that he would be willing to provide. And I think you were working with Dale Friends on that for the Horace Pippin. We can work out the details administratively or in the final land development, of course, but we would definitely need to work out what that monetary number is going to be.
Would that coincide with a fee in lieu for the trees?
No, I mean, no, they're separate.
And when would we have an estimate for that?
I would love to have one before next week, before you vote on that resolution, because we need to insert those numbers into there. So we'll work with Eli and Mr. Nagel on that.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Just regarding the tree budget, Don Edwards just gave us a tree budget for next year that the tree commission worked on. So there's probably some unit pricing in that budget to use.
Yeah, we can certainly look at that. And the one other thing we'll look at is the applicants, because they have to develop a escrow schedule. And in there, it has a schedule of all of the products that they're installing and a unit cost price. So we'll take, if they have prepared one so far, I doubt you have, but we can try to come up with some numbers based on those unit costs for the product that they're putting in and come up with a pretty close estimate of what that fee should be.
What's the estimated construction schedule? When would it start?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I don't know the answer. I mean, ideally, I would like to start this late next year. Anybody who is involved in construction, we're in a crazy time right now between high construction costs and high interest rates. But my goal would be to start this kind of this time next year. Just going back to what Kevin was discussing, when we built Chestnut Square, the borough accepted our amenities, the amenities for the community as the recreation for the community. We're asking the borough to, accept that again, but we'd like to make a donation, above that to Horace Pippin. I was taken over to Horace Pippin with Dale Friend, kind of an interesting park where the boroughs had the concept of either doing a whole dog park there and versus other things. And it's a park that's very close to this project. And we'd like to make a donation to see that park, something happen, whatever the borough deems necessary. I don't want to be responsible for discussing what it should be. Leave that up to the professionals at the Park and Rec Department.
Demolition of the existing site, would that happen,
It would
sooner
happen
than-
simultaneously to the actual construction of the project. Demolition would occur probably in a 2-week period. The buildings that are there are relatively easy to demo.
Great, thank you. Ms. Dorsey, any questions?
No question.
And while you're here, I always ask about the Wyeth property, if there's any update that you could provide to the public regarding that property.
So we have been dealing with The only thing preventing us at this point in time from submitting our revised final land development plan has been trying to work through the environmental bulk grading of the property based upon the final soil results, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm hoping that by the end of the year, maybe early next year, we will be in for final land development plan for that project for the two buildings that we've received preliminary approval from.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right, seeing no further comments here, I guess we could call that decision a 3-0 decision. Yes. All right. Okay, great. Now let's go back up to the Building and Housing 2024 preliminary budget presentation.
So I'm not as fancy as all those other guys with their PowerPoints. I like to be a little more efficient. But I definitely just want to have a good night, guys. Definitely want to just highlight the most significant changes in the building and housing budget. When we look at the revenues, it's really hard for us to pin down exactly what our permit revenue is going to be. It's a moving target. We try our best to forecast what projects we're going to get in that are large in nature, i.e. the Wyeth property and the other land development projects that we have in planning. And we hope that we get one or more of those within that budget period. So we did increase that building permit revenue by 20,000, expecting to have one of those come in. You'll see that we held the fire inspection revenue the same at 60,000. And I'll get it a little more into that and why we kept that the same in a minute when I get to staffing. You'll see a large reduction in the land development fees of 54%. And the reason for that change is we've made some changes to the process and how we handle land developments and the escrows. So typically, we would have required the developer to give us a check for $5,000, and we would hold that until the end of the project. And that would just cover if they didn't refuse to pay or didn't pay a fee for a consultant, we could use that money. But every month we were sending out bills to these developers to say, hey, you need to pay this amount of money for our legal fees or for our engineering fees. And we were chasing down money. So now what we do is for the new land developments, we require them for these large projects like we just saw. We have them submit a check to us for $30,000. We hold that in an escrow and we draw down on that when we get invoices from our consultants. So now we're not chasing down bills, sending bills out, and then holding on to those until we get paid. And then the finance department just sends them a monthly invoice of what that drawdown was, and they'll have to replenish it if it gets down to a certain point. So more efficient, and then lowers that liability number on our end. Jeff, you can scroll down a little bit for me. Great, thank you. You'll see that there is an increase in the salary expenses for the department. Right now, we have myself and an administrative assistant is our staff. We are working on rebuilding our department. We are currently conducting interviews. We have offered employment to one person as a building inspector, hopefully going to start next week. And then we're looking to fill the 2 other positions that we are currently vacant for code enforcement officer. Obviously, we need to do that. We need to have people in here who can do inspections, issue citations, handle complaints. And by increasing that salary a little bit is going to enable us to get individuals in here who are qualified, who are able to perform the job, and can provide a great benefit to not only the department, but the community. One of the benefits, though, is because of the positions currently being vacant and that we never hired somebody last budget season when we had the approval. We did save that money throughout the year. So then we can use some of that money to then transfer into the next budget cycle, which would then offset that increase that we're realizing here. Jeff, can you, oh no, stay here for a minute. Stay here for a minute. Excuse me. If you look at the mechanical inspector fee under operating expenses, this is another big reduction that we're going to save. And this is also helps offset the increase in the salary expenses. The individual who we just hired and will start next week, they have their mechanical inspector certification that will allow them to do mechanical inspections and plan review in-house. And we can reduce that third-party mechanical inspector fee by $15,000. And then we can roll that money, that savings, into their salary. We did leave some money in there just in case there's any projects that roll over that the third party was already working on. But that is going to be a great savings and a great benefit to the staffing that we very much need here. Jeff, yeah, if you can go to the other document. In the other documents, it's the same. I just removed two things and I highlighted some things that you see that the major reductions. But Jeff, if you can scroll down to the bottom for me. You'll see where I have fire inspection expense and land development expense highlighted. So they're removed. You'll see I removed those numbers from this sheet and it drops the total expenses down to 9%. And on the other sheet, it was 11%. I took those out because those don't really affect the overall budget for the department because that's money out, money in. So it should be a net zero because those are costs that we're incurring, but then we're getting reimbursed for those. So they don't have any effect on the overall budget number. So in the end, we do have a total expense increase of 9%. And the majority of that is related to salaries. And with that, those are the major changes in the budget. And I can take any questions at this time.
Mr. Gore, is there ever an instance where we're not reimbursed for the fire inspection or the land development expenses?
No. So we haven't started those fire inspections yet. Obviously, we had some issues with COVID was the biggest one. We put it on hold, and then we had staffing issues. My goal is to get this started up by the beginning of the year. I do plan on using a third-party agency to do those. But again, whatever costs we incur with that third-party agency will get reimbursed by the property owner for the cost of that inspection based on the fee schedule that we have.
One more question, if I may. The $30,000 that you said you're collecting up front and then the developers are replenishing that as we go. How did you arrive at the $30,000?
That was, I don't want to say it was just an arbitrary number that we selected, but it was a number that we felt comfortable with that would sustain the consultant fees for the entire preliminary and or final land development for quite a while, for several months. Again, if they were to get down below, get down to $5,000, they have to replenish that to 30,000. Hasn't happened yet. And really, we took that as an average of other projects and what bills we had sent out based on the invoices we received from our consultants. And that's how we really came to that number.
Okay, thank you. Are the fees based on the size of the project? Like, would it be possible to charge a percentage upfront?
So we just did the 30,000 set, and because when you have a large land development, Wyeth, for example, when they had their original project plan to go down there, before they came in with their newest rendition, we paid nearly $30,000 in consultant fees in the first couple of months. So we said, hey, we need to have a number that's going to cover those larger projects and the larger bills that come in from our consultants. That might be a question that I'd have to ask our solicitor, whether or not, what is their maximum that we can charge? I think it has to be reasonable. But it's not 30,000 for every project. It's just for those large ones. If there's a small subdivision or land development, we only charge 5,000. So we call major and minor subdivisions or land developments, and they're separated into those categories and what they have to pay.
And that's really why I asked if it would make sense to maybe charge a percentage, right, based on the size of the project. So a smaller project would be a smaller retainer, so to speak,
Yeah,
and a larger project would have a much larger retainer.
yeah.
The other question regarding new hirees, do you feel that they would bring in more revenue with more inspections and permits?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We will be doing, my goal is to have one of those individuals get certified to do fire inspections so that we can do it in-house and we won't have a third party doing it with, better control over it that way. But where you're really going to see some increased revenues is through, responding to complaints and possibly citations. That's not our main goal to write citations, and that's not our main revenue source. We will see an increase in that just because we're going to have more people out there doing it. But yeah, there will be additional, I think we'll see an increase in permits as well, because if I'm out there by myself, I might not see somebody doing some work without permits, or more people out there, more eyes, they can see people working without permits, and then require them to come in and get those permits, which would then certainly be an increase in revenue.
Thank you. Any further questions regarding the 2024 preliminary budget? Any public comment? Okay, seeing none. Let's move to action item B. Consider October 18th, 2023 to hold a public hearing to amend Chapter 112 to add a new use for community gardens.
Yeah, so if you recall, this came up several months ago. This was something that Ms. Vaccaro wanted on the agenda in response to the issue that we had down on South Poplar with the community garden, which was a great idea. So we wanted to allow this as a permitted use in really all of the zoning districts, with the exception of the industrial district and the institutional district, where it just doesn't make sense. So we had an original version. We sent it over to the county for their review. They came back with some comments, and we had to come back and make some amendments, but we have it in a good position now where it serves the borough. And we made some additional amendments to our existing ordinance where we had removed the definition for agricultural use or operation, which wasn't even used in our ordinance. So we were able to clean that up a little bit. But we have this new community garden use. It's defined in there. It does not allow the keeping of animals as part of that operation, which was one of the comments we took from the county. So we're just asking to set that recommended date of October 18th.
Any questions or public comment?
No questions.
Okay, we could call that a 3-0 decision. Moving to item C, approve advertisement for FEMA. Conditional letter of map revision related to 205 Carter Drive, West Goshen Township.
Seems pretty complex on the surface. Yeah, it's, all we are asking for is, and actually the developer is asking for us to approve just the advertisement for this to go into the newspaper. They are required by law to do it. So this project down at 205 Carter Drive in West Goshen is changing the floodplain mapping ever so slightly, both in West Goshen Township and the borough, down by South Adams Street at the 700 block, all the way down the southern end of the borough. So they need to advertise those changes, and they are they're requesting from FEMA for this conditional letter of map revision, which will actually revise the maps. So some people may be removed from the floodplain and some people may ever so slightly be added into it down there. They're minor changes, but they're required, they can't increase the base flood elevation at all, which they're not, but it's just shifting that line a little bit based on the changes that they're doing to the project down there. So they just want us to approve this advertisement for them so they can put it in the paper.
Thank you. They spelt your name wrong.
Yeah, look at that. There you go. Okay, good catch. We'll fix that. 3-0 with the name change, huh?
Yeah, we'll put that as the amended version there. Any questions or public comment regarding the approved advertisement? Mayor DeBaptiste?
My only question would be if they're changing the floodplain ever so slightly, how does that affect homeowners and insurance? Because there are homes down there on the south.
There are, and when they originally submitted this to us, they said that there are no changes that are going to affect any structures. I reviewed it in depth and I said that I think you're wrong. I think there are structures that are going to be affected. They are going to have to notify those property owners of those changes that are possibly going to be affected by this. But it's not 100% definitive if they are going to be affected or not. Based on the map they provided, it's not 100% clarity, if that makes sense. When you're looking at these maps and these structures, they overlay the floodplain on a very blurry overhead aerial photograph. So it's hard to tell, but out of an abundance of caution, I did suggest that there may be some structures that are affected and that they need to notify those property owners. And this is the beginning of that process and putting this advertisement in there.
Wouldn't they have to, or shouldn't they reach out to the property owners themselves?
Yes, they will have to.
Initially?
Yeah, they will have to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I advise them that they have to.
And this area affects Carter Drive? Like, which
Yeah,
is
so
at
they-
least 2 miles away, isn't
Yeah,
it?
so they, part of the project, it's downstream, obviously, of the area in that floodplain. They're probably doing some grading changes or removing a building or putting a new building in there that's going to be in a different location on the site that's going to affect the floodplain and the flow of that water in the floodway, which then changes those boundaries of that special flood hazard area.
Yeah, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but that area is always dicey anyway when it rains. And on top of that, that's the area where the warehouses are going to go. I think South Adams borders part of that. So I'm just wondering how all of that would impact them.
Yeah, I don't know the full impact. All I can tell you is that the boundary was changing and there are some new structures that may be affected and there are some structures that were going to be removed from the floodplain.
Mr. Gore, I had a similar but different question. Would the builder be responsible for remediating that?
No. Um, this process has to go through FEMA. FEMA regulates this. They have to follow they have to follow their regulations. The project is not in the borough, so they don't have to really follow our floodplain regulations, but our floodplain regulations are based on the federal regulations. So it's very similar, and they are following the correct process. So as long as FEMA were to approve this conditional letter of map revision, then I don't think that we're in any position to challenge it. We just have a chance to review it and make any comments, which we've done.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We did call that a 3-0 decision. Let's move on to item D, approve the August 2023 HARB submission recommendations. I reviewed these. These look pretty self-explanatory. Does anyone have any comment regarding any of these items 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5?
I have not.
Any public comment? Seeing none, we could move forward with these recommendations. Let's move on to item E, approve the August 2023 Smart Growth minutes. Any objections?
No.
Seeing none, they're approved. Any other business? I just have one comment or question regarding other business. If you could provide an update regarding the Davis property.
Went by there the other day, actually, to see if there was any activity. DEP is continuing their remediation of the site. They have equipment running. There was nobody there. I do have to reach out to the property owner to see if they can get the weeds cut over there. They looked pretty bad. I was contacted by somebody who was representing the Westchester Recycling Facility, which is the old Codish. And they were looking to expand over there. We had conversations with them in the past, and we told them that that's not something that we were going to allow. But they're strong-willed, and they've reached out again, and we'll probably tell them the same thing. And if they want to file for any zoning appeals or anything, they can certainly do that, but it's not something that we're going to permit to allow the expansion of a non-conforming use.
Thank you. Any comments about Davis Soil? Any other business? Seeing none, let's adjourn 7:07 PM.